to the Edge. I have an interesting evening for you today, and it's with Kerry and Kerry Kirschner, the current mayor of Sarasota and a former mayor of Sarasota. I'd like to have each of you introduce yourselves in terms of your past, and we'll start with the elder Kirschner and let him tell about the past and what years you were mayor and what it was like a little bit at that point, or what your other credits are besides having been a former mayor. I think you were the Argus Group.
Right, I'm currently executive director of the Argus Foundation, which is a public policy group that's supported by basically CEOs of companies in the Manatee-Sarasota County area primarily. But I had a very career jack of all trades and a master of none. Corporately, I worked in the corporate world for a while in pharmaceuticals and cosmetics. Grew up here, moved back down here in the mid-70s, was in the fruit shipping business, got involved with my neighborhood, got on the planning board of the city. Then there was a lawsuit saying that the districts weren't fair in the city, and so they called for new elections, and the person in my district decided not to run. I decided to run 1985. Served 2 terms at that point. Terms were 3 years. And served till 91, at which time I went to work for Mote Marine Laboratory.
Was that, you're talking about the city commission?
Right, city commission, yeah. So I had two terms as mayor in those 6 years, and then went to work as marketing and development director at Mote Marine Laboratory. And then in 1993 moved over to the Argus Foundation.
Kelly?
So we came back, as Pop said, and Augie, I guess you didn't get the memo about tonight was holiday sweater wear, and we're still wearing the ties.
Oh, there you go. Oh, I'm sorry.
We'll put you in a Lou Carnesecca sweater during the break.
I missed that email. Yeah.
Okay. My history in Sarasota is coming home probably when I was 9 months old, when Kerry bought a house here and bought a fruit shipping business up on the North Trail, and obviously then went to school here, high school here, graduated from Cardinal Mooney in '93, and went to college in Washington, D.C. at Georgetown University. I did a 5-year program, got my bachelor's and master's at the same time, master's degree in Latin American Studies and a bachelor's degree in foreign service. Principal reason I decided to do it all together was I was fortunate enough to be in the right place at the right time, and got a job working with the basketball team my sophomore year that then led to me getting a full scholarship at Georgetown.
Oh, at Georgetown. Yeah. You were a manager there.
Yeah.
So and you got a scholarship.
A full ride.
For being a full ride.
Yeah.
Right. For being a manager.
Yeah.
Right. And humbly, he doesn't tell you this, he's in the Georgetown Basketball Hall of Fame.
How did that happen? Because they won
because he did such a good job as manager.
Well, yeah.
That's true.
Is that true?
Yeah.
Is that what they said about you? Is that how they talked about you?
I guess so. I didn't know that. It's something I learned today. I'll have to look that up.
Is that right?
Well, you are.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, tell him what your job was as manager. I think this is very interesting story.
Augie's interview? Is it your interview?
But it's okay.
Augie,
this is fine. This is freewheeling.
Tell him who your roommate was.
No, it was a great experience. I still have dreams today of whether or not I can continue to get degrees and stay there, because it was such a lucrative deal.
Funny.
But and my junior year suite mate was Allen Iverson.
Oh.
So that was really an incredible year. Probably, one of the greatest athletes of my generation, and I had the opportunity to just sit day in and day out and watch him on the court and travel around the country watching him play, and really a great experience in addition to obviously the education. So,
now is that a teaching order? Is that Catholic, or is Georgetown?
It's a Jesuit.
Jesuit. I thought it was Jesuit. Yeah. So you have that background.
And then having the master's degree in Latin American Studies, but obviously being the manager, you really couldn't do the year abroad. I spent a summer in Ecuador, but I almost felt that I had cheated myself. How could I, profess to have a master's degree in Latin American Studies and only have lived there for a few months at a time? So rather than do all the interviews that everyone else was doing, I applied for the Peace Corps and got assigned to a municipal development job in Guatemala. Do you need to get it? So I ended up working as a Peace Corps volunteer for a little over 3 years, and then subsequent to that worked on a USAID rural development project there in Guatemala as well, and probably would have been there for a few years, but my now wife had moved down to live with me, and 6 months into that job, her father, Randy Topchin, that was a long-time, native Sarasotan too, was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer.
Ooh,
and given 6 months to live.
Story here, wow.
Yeah. So that's really what brought me back to Sarasota, and I don't think.
And the mayor thing, or the commission thing, got interesting. And you're living where?
I live close to Sarasota High School in the Alta Vista neighborhood.
So you live in the area of community interest.
Well, let me, if I may, as the proud father, move in here and say, Kelly's interest really came not only in politics, was in Washington. I too went to Georgetown, and one of my classmates happened to be Bill Clinton.
Oh, really?
And when he had just gotten into office, and Kelly was a freshman, he said to me, do you think Kelly would like to work in the White House? And I said, well, who wouldn't? As a student. And so Kelly worked at the White House for what, 5 years?
No.
4?
Yeah.
In what capacity?
The first 2 years before I had the full-time gig as manager, as a volunteer intern in the West Wing, working in the Office of Public Liaison.
During the Clinton administration?
Alexis Herman, who became...
Now let me ask this question at this point.
Sure.
Did this determine your political affiliation?
No, I think my affiliation was probably determined even before arriving in D.C., at least for, at that moment in my life. And
the social justice concerns with Ecuador and all of that.
Yeah. So, people ask me, well, it's the DNA that you ran for city commission because of the experience of your father, or it's that experience in the White House. And I would actually say the greater experience was being a Peace Corps volunteer and working for a mayor in Guatemala in a rural municipality of about 100,000 people, where that to me was more of the in-depth experience of constituent outreach, and we had 200 rural villages literally inside this municipality.
Now, where was this?
In northern Guatemala.
Northern Guatemala.
Yeah, close to the border with Belize. And
his job was the liaison to the mayor, isn't that correct? As a Peace Corps volunteer. In
the planning office. Yeah. So literally every day we were going out to these villages, some of, many of which you would have to walk 6-10 kilometers because there were no access roads.
I'm going to deviate a little bit from, so the issues coming, with this change of leadership in the state, the local issues and the state issues and the national issues are all going to converge. The dream bill that was killed off by the Republican leadership is going to come back to bite them. They're going to have a big convention or meeting down in Miami with former Governor Bush, trying to rescue the leadership of the Hispanics in Miami back to the Republican Party. And here you're down there, you see this whole panorama of poverty and the general, what I understand about Guatemala, it's an oligarchy, and the police act for the wealthy, and farmers are screwed to the wall, literally. I had a friend who worked in Guatemala and gave out computers down there, Neil Hendricks, and he was threatened several times by the police. They did not want the people to be educated. They wanted to block them from receiving these computers. And he was bringing free computers down, reconditioned and so forth, and giving them to people. He was a threat. So let's talk about this a second from the political end. This city of Sarasota, this community of Sarasota, is going to have a growing Hispanic population. It's a politically moderate community for all intents and purposes. You're a moderate Republican. You are a moderate Democrat, would you say?
Yeah, I'm certainly fiscally conservative, but
socially liberal.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair.
So you want to spend the money on the people, but carefully.
Yeah, I think there's balance in all things, and to take this discussion on our Hispanic population, it's not growing. It is our largest minority now in the city of Sarasota.
It's not growing?
It is growing, but I'm saying it's not like it's a small segment of our population. It's 20% of our population, so it's not something that we're talking about perhaps in the future as
right
everyone
now
does about this country. It's right now. I think probably a little bit after 2000, our Hispanic community outnumbered our African American community. And then that's true nationwide. I just learned a few weeks ago that in 2014, Univision will be the #1 watched network television station in the United States, past CBS, past Fox, past ABC News.
Really?
That's in 3 years, literally.
Mm-hmm.
So the issue, just to go back to the DREAM Act, that to me was really unfortunate about it, and it'll be interesting to see how things pan out 10 years from now with the Republican Party. But what's really disturbing is the hypocrisy, and really in the state of Florida, the hypocrisy of all this, that 5 years ago, and I occasionally, prior to getting into politics, would freelance write for local and national publications, and I wrote an article on our booming Hispanic population, and it was booming because there was demand for labor, and every one of our subcontractors, contractors, builders, etc., if it were not for that migrant labor, this boom that we experienced and that incredible paper wealth that was created would have never happened. And no one said a word, and no one raised their voice. And these were individuals that came here, that sacrificed a lot and risked a lot in coming here. And no one said a word, and it was, we're going to put the blinders on. And then now you see, Scott spent $8 million, $8 million just on the anti-immigrant TV advertisements alone, not counting the rest of it, talking about how the ills of this recession are entirely somehow due to this immigrant community, and in the
taking jobs away.
Yeah, and in the meantime, you have these families that brought children here, from the 80s till through now, that perhaps they were 3, 5 years old when they came here. These are children that don't even speak Spanish, perhaps.
Besides the should-be circumstance, which I like to compare Democrats with Republicans this way. The Democrats are the should-be people, and the Republicans are the gonna-be people. It's our way or the highway kind of people versus the. Why isn't it this way? And constantly, and that's why they don't mesh very well, the Democrats. And whereas they march in pretty well locks, except in this latest legislation nationally. I think it's 12 of the Republicans, moderates, just pulled away from the very extremes. Murkowski from Alaska voted every time with Obama, even on the DREAM Act. So you've got
Augie, I mean, to just cast all Republicans in this light, I think is incorrect, because if you look back at
give your dad a chance.
well, some of the amnesty legislation that came about for illegal aliens, was done under Republican administrations.
I know. Even George Bush, the son, was pushing for basically amnesty.
Exactly, exactly correct. And if you look at the economy of Texas, it's heavily dependent on probably a lot of illegal Hispanic immigrants.
So they won the Alamo.
Well,
again.
well, in truth, this is a country of immigrants. I mean, let's be honest about it. Nobody, the Native American is almost extinct, and it is populated by immigrants. In our future, like it was at the turn of the century, and not this century, but the previous century, was based upon large levels of immigrants, coming to our shores. And so, I think it's.
I was baiting you a little bit.
No,
Kerry.
but I think what the consternation is on the part of so many people is the fact that we don't see a structure in our immigration policy that seems to be fair and understanding, and the social service benefits that are given to people who can come here, who can get on a plane and declare themselves political amnesty, and then get all the social service benefits